In Parliament, Prime Minister Modi is talking about the arrival of a new global order. This as the opposition continues to target the government for the Indo-US trade deal, accusing the government of capitulating. The government has rubbished these claims. In fact, Agriculture Minister Shivraj Singh Chouhan has issued a detailed statement saying all of India's red lines, particularly in farming and dairy sectors, have been protected. Yet more details, the fine print as it were, of the trade agreement are awaited. Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal says that it could take another 4 to 5 days before the last mile is covered, the details are finalized, and a joint statement is issued. On a day when America is asking all of its citizens to leave Iran, on a day when Islamabad has seen a suicide bomb attack in the heart of its city, we are going to be examining this new global order and whether India can really trust Trump in more detail with our distinguished experts. I'm Barkha Dutt, you're with the Mojo Story. On the program today, we look at the Indo-US deal. We take you inside the negotiations and look at India's confidence that red lines have been protected. Meanwhile, the Americans have claimed that India has stopped the purchase or will stop the purchase entirely of Russian oil. It is significant that the MEA and India have said nothing on this except that India's interests will be protected when it comes to decisions on energy and energy diversification. Domestic politics has not left the conversation around this agreement. In Parliament, the opposition continues to target the government and literally no debate is taking place on the floor of the House. Rahul Gandhi, the leader of the opposition, has been personally training his guns at the Prime Minister over this deal. Foreign Minister Jaishankar has met with Marco Rubio. The government has said it would take another 4 to 5 days before the fine print of this deal is finalized and a joint statement is issued, and could take up to mid-March before an agreement is actually operationalized. Between now and then, are there still some concerns? Well, the government is saying India's red lines have been protected. But can India trust a very whimsical, volatile, and frankly, untrustworthy Donald Trump? Let me introduce our experts today as we continue to decode what's happening in the world around us. As I said, there's never a dull moment. America has asked its citizens to leave Iran, and we are seeing a suicide attack in the streets of Islamabad. I want to welcome our experts to the program. Veteran diplomat Ambassador Prabhu Dayal is with us. Good evening and good to see you. And also joining us is a military veteran and author, former army commander, General Raj Shukla. Thank you very much. Suhasini Haidar, the journalist, should be with us very soon as well. I want to start by playing out a very important point made by the Prime Minister in Parliament, something that may have got lost in all the political din and the tutu meme between both sides. Here's the Prime Minister talking about a new global order. Take a look.
साफ साफ नजर आ रहा है कि दुनिया एक नए ग्लोबल ऑर्डर की तरफ, नए वर्ल्ड ऑर्डर की तरफ आगे बढ़ रहा है। सेकंड वर्ल्ड वॉर के बाद एक वर्ल्ड ऑर्डर बना था, अब एक नए वर्ल्ड ऑर्डर की तरफ विश्व बहुत तेजी से आगे बढ़ रहा है। और सबसे बड़ी खुशी की बात है, सारी घटनाओं का अराजनीतिक तरीके से निष्पक्ष भाव से विश्लेषण करेंगे तो झुकाव भारत की तरफ है। विश्व मित्र के रूप में, विश्व बंधु के रूप में आज भारत अनेक देशों का विश्वस्त पार्टनर बना है और हम कंधे से कंधा मिला करके विश्व कल्याण की दिशा में भी अपनी उचित भूमिका निभा रहे हैं।
Now, the Prime Minister there is talking about being a Vishwa Mitra, but are there still concerns, and is that really the case? Where does this reconcile with strategic autonomy? Where does this reconcile with the sense that India has often had to walk a solitary path, especially, for example, in the aftermath of Operation Sindoor. Let me get first comments. I'll start with you, General Shukla. Trump called Xi Jinping soon after this moment or this announcement with Modi. It's quite clear that he has a tripolar, if not bipolar, view of the world, in which the great powers are America, China, maybe Russia. In this scheme, where does India fit in? And should we be careful? Should we be still wary before being very relieved at this moment? Should we wait to see the fine print?
So, Barkha, everybody seems to be in trouble and everybody seems to be looking for relief. Z called Trump and Z called Putin because he's in trouble with his generals. So, let me quote a phrase from Mr. M.J. Akbar. He said the 21st century is dying, 20th century is dying, and the 21st century hasn't quite arrived. I think that's what the Prime Minister was alluding to, the collapse of the World War II order and the new order not really having taken shape. But I've been saying for a while, I wonder if Mr. Dayal would agree that we are in the midst of a hotting up Cold War 2.0 between the Dragon Bear and the US. That is really the big picture. And as far as India is concerned, so this very deal tells you that we are no longer a wallflower. We are a toast of the world. We have considerable weight and influence, but the test ahead lies whether we can convert that weight and influence into power with wisdom. Now let's come to the deal. A political truce does seem to have been called. As you said, Mr. Goel is hopeful that a joint statement will be out in 5 days, a legal agreement by March, but much of the nitty-gritty still has to be worked out. What happens to our rolling back on the oil? And, the American Agri Secretary, I think her name is Brooke Rollins, she was only talking of expanding access to the farm market in India, pumping cash into rural America. So no signs of, how this truce will really play out. Yet, now that the political truce has been called, I am hopeful about the nitty-gritty. But let me make a few points about the wider geopolitics. I think both sides have delivered their messages effectively. Trump and MAGA have told India, and we have to be realistic about it. They are saying that if you are indeed a strategic partner, demonstrate it with greater preferential treatment towards the USA. And many of those people have been saying that. We do have to acknowledge that that is what they want. MAGA, the camp, was more explicit. It said, behave like a strategic ally if you claim to be one. So there are pressures on our strategic autonomy. India has said that certainly we will consider the proposition, but we will not be pushed around. Other relationships are valuable, Russia, and I do think that relationship is valuable. We have to calibrate our relationship with Russia. But the larger point is that we have said we have other options, the FTA with Europe. So therefore, I say there is mixed messaging here, and both sides are jostling. But now let me say this, and I'll end my opening remarks here. Did Trump blink, or has he reached out? In my view, in either case, this is the time for some grand reciprocity on the part of India. Not because we need to bend, but because we can afford it. We must test relationship out with grand reciprocity. This is not the time to count the pennies, but to look at the pounds. So what I'm saying that some concessions here and there on agri trade that would also help our businesses to smarten up. But the larger bargain, and I've been making this point, we need the US relationship. The larger bargain in terms of technologies, critical minerals, all that stuff. Which we
but do we have to buy this relationship? Because Trump tom-tommed the 500 billion figure, which is apparently how much India. Again, there is no confirmation of this from India. These are not Trump's claims.
Okay, Barkha, it's going to be difficult. But Mr. Goel did try to explain the $500 billion figures away. He said we'll buy energy, data centers, ICT products, civil aviation. I mean, let me pose this question to Mr. Dayal. Can India afford this grand reciprocity? I think we can. We are no longer a wallflower. We are a toast of the world. We should show greater agility. So let me put it in Hindi. Ki, जो सिद्धांत है, सिद्धांत प्रिंसिपल, सिद्धांत हमने दिखा दिए, अब चतुराई और विवेक का समय है.
Chaturai or Vivek is cleverness and wisdom.
Wisdom. don't keep sticking on those same things. Or Siddhant humne dikha diya. We've shown that high principle matters. I
Okay.
really look forward to what Mr. Dayal has to say.
I'll bring in Ambassador Dayal now, but before he speaks, I want to read out a very interesting comment that is coming in our live stream from our very engaged audience members. Saurabh Vishish says, India should look at the deal with Trump as a stopgap for the next 3 years and intensify de-risking from the US to Europe, Japan, and others. The US is simply a partner like others, not a friend. I found this comment to be very interesting, and I can see General Shukla. Are you wanting to come in before the
One,
ambassador response? Yeah, sure.
yeah,
Yeah,
one quick point. Barkha,
yeah.
see, we are the fourth largest economy. The Lowy Institute tells us we are the third largest in terms of comprehensive national power. Now that we are in the big game, let's shed our strategic innocence. Everybody, our adversaries, our competitors, our partners, and our friends alike, will undermine our rise. But a new, different India should be capable of dealing with everybody. A friendly America is also an adversarial America. Both. We should have the confidence. And I think the time has come to demonstrate that confidence.
Okay, I want to welcome Suhasini Haidar, a veteran journalist who's, of course, at The Hindu, editor at The Hindu, with us as well. But Ambassador Dayal, let me bring you in. You were just about to speak. I think the comment made in our audience was, buy time. Trump will be gone in 3 years and de-risk from America. Don't lean in further towards the United States of America. Don't look at the US as the great hope, the great friend, because that clearly it is shown that it is not. How do you respond to that? And do you still have lingering concerns about the fine print that we are yet to see, and that, according to Commerce Minister, is in fact still being finalized before the joint statement is issued?
Well, first of all, let me say that trade tensions had escalated to such a level that the bilateral relationship with the United States was severely endangered. So, if these trade tensions can be eased, I would be very happy. And if the Trump policy ends up in lowering the tariffs to 18%, then of course there will be a huge boost to our export sector. So I welcome it greatly. But as you pointed out, our Commerce Minister said yesterday that the joint statement outlining the details of what is agreed upon would be signed within 4 to 5 days, and that the formal legal agreement, which is being currently drafted, is expected to be signed around mid-March. So a lot can happen during this period. And President Trump, we all know, is very unpredictable. In fact, the only thing predictable about him is that he will always be unpredictable. And he's very transactional. So he has come out with this statement which he issued on social media, outlining what he wants to do with India and why he has given these concessions, as he put it. He pointed out certain things which are very questionable. Of course, as you mentioned, he said that India will be buying $500 billion worth of stuff from America. He mentioned various products. Of course, he didn't specify what was the time period that he had in mind. Was he hinting that India will buy it in a year, 3 years, 4 years? But then our Commerce Minister has tried to put things in perspective and pointed out that we are buying a lot of stuff.
Are you concerned by the claims on Russian oil, Ambassador? Are you concerned?
Now, yes, I was coming
by
to that.
Yeah.
I was coming to that. He said that Prime Minister Modi had agreed to stop buying Russian oil and would instead increase purchases from the US and potentially Venezuela. Now, of course, our Prime Minister has not said a word. In fact, from the Indian government, there has not been any comment in this regard. However, as regards buying from the United States, we have been mentioning that we want to increase our purchases of energy-related products from the United States. Now, if we come to Venezuela, I think their oil sector is decimated. And
yes, but do see the headline. Do see the headline in Financial Express about Reliance Industries purchasing 2 million barrels of Venezuelan crude oil. This is quoted in the FE. So I'm just saying there's clearly oil politics at the heart of, to some degree at least, powering some of these decisions. Would you agree, Ambassador, before I come to Suhasini?
Yes, of course. Trump certainly has his oil related policies at the center of what he's trying to do in terms of transactional arrangements with India. But whether we will stop buying or whether we will reduce is something that remains to be seen. Of course, we are reducing. Our imports have come down. In December, they were much less than what they were earlier, and they're expected to come down further in January and February. So that may appease him a bit. But when it comes to totally stopping oil purchases from Russia, I'm not sure whether we have that in mind.
Okay, let me bring in Suhasini now. Suhasini, you joined just a few minutes late, but I think the question that we're asking is there still many a slip between the cup and the lip? Is there still a lot we don't know? The agriculture minister has now gone on record to say that the government can assure people that agriculture and dairy redlines have been guarded, have been protected. On this business of stopping to purchase Russian oil, even Ambassador Dayal just said that while the data shows, well before the announcement of this trade deal, that in December, Reuters shows that India's import of Russian oil was down by 22% compared to November, lowest ever in 2 years. So clearly that process had already begun, but whether it will be a complete zero, as Trump claims, Ambassador Dayal doubts that. What for you are the lingering questions at this moment?
Well, to begin with, the question is really, where is the deal? This is not how a trade deal is negotiated between two countries. And even if you make some kind of leeway for Mr. Trump being Mr. Trump, at the end of the day, as of today, which is 4 days after that call between Prime Minister Modi and President Trump, it's a tale of two tweets. What we have is Mr. Trump's social media post, which has been now extrapolated on by his trade negotiators, but they're essentially saying exactly what he says in that social media tweet. Prime Minister Modi put his tweet out saying, "Thank you for bringing tariffs down to 18%. So I'll just go by what we really know is happening. To begin with, that India's tariffs will come down to 18% from 50%. Now, that's obviously something good. It's something the exporters have really been hurting for the last few months, and this will be a huge relief to them. But I do want to make the point that at the end of the day, it will still hurt the economy. 18% is higher than what the US was charging just a year ago, which was about 2 to 3%. This is going to hurt. The second place of concern, I think, and we have to be realistic about what this means, is about Mr. Trump's contention that India will put in $500 billion worth of investment. The Indian government has not denied that this is the case. In fact, officials, government sources quoted by the Hindu and others as well, have said this will be over a period of time. Over 5 years, we will buy $100 billion worth each. And that's not so much. But think about it, Barkha. Right now, we do import about $50 billion worth from the US in a year. This would mean doubling that. It would mean more or less exhausting India's capacity for imports. And it will come at the cost of so many other imports from other countries that we have been doing at a time when India is tying up with so many other countries for free trade agreements. This is the second bit of concern we must think about. The third bit of concern, I think we will only know when the details come out, as you know, whether Mr. Chouhan is right and no agricultural market access has been given that has not been given to others. That all remains to be seen, because the Commerce Minister has made it clear that first came the call, then comes the what he called meaningful discussions, which are continuing right now. They will continue for another 4 or 5 days. So now there will be meaningful discussions. Those meaningful discussions will lead to a joint statement. That's the framework or terms of reference, if you like, between the two countries. So this is really going backwards in the normal process.
And you said this is not how a conventional deal takes place. So
absolutely. We've just seen the Europe-India trade deal, and we know that this is not how it's done. It's not brought up by stealth. It's not brought up by announcements being made on one side. And finally, Barkha, I think the concern over giving up Russian oil is very real. We cannot whitewash it by saying, oh, but we're just reducing a little bit. At the end of the day, in January, Russian oil imports are down to a 38-month low. That's a more than 3-year low that India is now taking from Russia, which compares to a time when it was taking 35% of its oil intake from Russia at the time. And I think for those who feel that it's okay, that we need to give up Russian oil in order to placate the US, I think we have to think not only in terms of what we would perhaps give up in terms of discounts and how much we will get in terms of sanctions. I think we have to think in terms of India's credibility, its energy security, in terms of its strategic autonomy. This is not the first time. This is the 5th time that the US has successfully bullied India into accepting sanctions that India never has accepted in the past. And India's position is UN sanctions are the only ones we accept. We don't accept unilateral sanctions. And yet in 2019, India gave up Iran oil. In 2019, 2020, India gave up Venezuelan oil. Now it is giving up Russian oil. We are also being told by the US that you have to buy US oil. And now you can buy Venezuelan oil that has been seized by the US, more or less stolen goods. But that Venezuelan oil, we are being told that we have to buy it from them. And finally, it's on the question of whether we will continue our trade with Iran, continue the Chabahar port. So if that becomes India's reputation as a country that gives in every time the US puts this kind of pressure, and it's interesting that India did not accept this pressure during the Biden administration, but accepts it every time Mr. Trump is in power, then I think we have to think more seriously about what that will mean for India.
Okay, so let me bring in General Shukla. General Shukla, you were arguing that this is time to show grand reciprocity. And before Suhasini joined, I asked you whether that reciprocity had to be displayed through commerce. Like, is it that one has to literally buy this trade deal, which is somehow what it feels like when Trump makes this announcement of $500 billion. Suhasini has taken the argument further and said that effectively Trump is twisting our arm, on and therefore contradicting our position or our belief in strategic autonomy. And if Washington is going to decide for us where and who we buy or don't buy oil from, then that is a form of bullying. There are two ways to look at it. One is, this is where our national interests lie, so be it. The other way is, no, this is setting a bad precedent for the future, and we must not go down this road. How do you respond?
So see, there is one view which Suhasini put forth. There is the other view that Trump linked. Trump made the first call. But my point really is that we know what our strengths are, and we must retreat only as much as we wish to. And here, let me make, a couple of points. So let's look at the macro picture of trade. For quite some time now, I've heard, people who speak for China advertising the fact that China plus ASEAN was getting bigger than US plus EU. In recent times, India plus UK plus Australia plus New Zealand plus EU plus Oman plus UAE, if US happens, isn't this bigger? And I would argue that, we made some concessions because this is Trump. Previously, these disputes were settled at the WTO. Now they get settled by Trump between those two tweets. I mean, that is the new reality. While adjusting to this new reality, how far do we wish to go? And if this deal works out, and that as of now has not been, there are worries, which I too pointed out to, the Indo-US relationship will settle into mutually beneficial cycles of opportunity and growth. And now let's look beyond. What do we need? We need packed silica to get going. We need critical minerals to get going. In the next phase of our growth, we need energy, mining, refining. Much of this will come from the United States. And let me also make one point of the broader geopolitics, why we should not be shall we say, apologetic, because the Americans need us too. If I'm the American president today, and my reading of the national security strategy and the national defense strategy tells me that what the Americans have decided to do is to firm up the Western Hemisphere, not meddle too much in the Middle East, to leave Russia to Europe, and focus on China, because their ultimate objective is to contain or counter Chinese hegemony in Asia. And if that is their objective, the two players that they need are Japan and India. Philippines will not do. So I am repeatedly saying that all that Suhasini is saying is right, but we have many cards. We are not a wallflower. We are now the toast of the world, as we have demonstrated in the last 2 months. And therefore, we should take an aggregate look, which I'm sure the paths that will be. And if in the overall interest we give and take a little in the agri-dairy sector, and we profit in the larger technologies, economy, critical minerals piece, so the grand bargain has to be seen. That is my view.
Let me try and put it, Ambassador Dayal, a little more plainly. Perhaps in a post-Trump era, the old siddhant, the principles that we held on to so sort of closely, can no longer be operationalized, and that's not true just for India; it's true for a lot of the world. Is that how you look at it? Because there are people, friends of mine in America, who say, "Oh, please stop comparing it to the time there was 0% tariff. This is the reality. You're living in a Trumpian world. Get with the program." That's one way of looking at it. The other way of looking at it is what Suhasini is saying, that we've already made an error in leaning in too closely towards Washington, and to do so now is actually not to secure our interests, because the US has shown, at least under Trump, that it is not our friend.
Well, let us see what is put down in the joint statement and whether we are ceding ground to Trump. Now, let me mention that apart from Trump saying that India will stop purchasing Russian oil and saying that India will buy $500 billion worth of stuff from America, he also said that India will move to reduce its own tariffs and non-tariff barriers against US products to zero. So why should we be charging zero if he has condescended to charge us 18%? I think it just doesn't make any sense. If he wants us to charge zero, then he should charge us zero. So there is something bizarre in all this. It's all targeted towards his support base. He wants to show them that he is the one who counts in the world. He can tell India to stop buying Russian oil. He can tell India to buy $500 million worth of stuff from America. He can tell India not to charge tariffs on American products. He is just trying to impress his support base. Now let us see what is put down in the joint statement. That is going to be very important. I hope we are tough when we negotiate what is going to be the content of that joint statement.
I think that's fair. Little bit of our debate is, as they say, hawa mein, because we don't actually have certain specific details at all. But Suhasini, a question in response to the point you made about oil coming from Prasad. Barkha, when we upped our purchase of Russian oil in lieu of GCC oil, did we not hurt our GCC interests? So that doesn't make any sense. All I say as an Indian is, apna bhi time aayega. So we are good. So again, it's also worth remembering that we used to buy at one point, only 1% of our sort of oil came from Russia. So it's not as if we've always bought energy from Russia and now we're suddenly being asked by the Americans. It was a situational decision. And we held on to it as a statement of sort of independence, which I get at a sentimental level. But in terms of realpolitik, what are the options? Look at the whole world. Look at the Europeans who had to lie prostrate before Trump, and even that was not enough, is what they realized.
I think, Barkha, the fact is that we bought oil from Russia, which was discounted. It wasn't about some grand principle. It was about doing what was realpolitik. Now it seems realpolitik means that you have to give it up. Fine, fair enough. I'm just drawing the chronology to your attention and saying this is not the first time the US and particularly Mr. Trump has bullied India and India has succumbed. Do we want to continue in this manner? Because the first time we gave up Iranian oil. Iranian oil, and I've said this before on your show, was much cheaper. was much sweeter crude. It's a light crude that our refineries at the time were calibrated for. We used to get between 10 to 15% of that oil from Iran, and it comes from so close that it would be the obvious choice. The US made us give that up in 2019, 2020, and we've not been able to get that back. The US made us give up Venezuelan oil, which is a heavy crude.
I think we lost Suhasini there. Ambassador Dayal, if you are able to hear me, I'm sure she'll reconnect. You said you hope that we negotiate hard and tough. What particularly would you be expecting Indian negotiators to focus on?
Well, first of all, we should be tough when it comes to the sectors which we consider sensitive, agriculture and dairy being among them. Now, according to media reports, the two sides have agreed to leave these strategic sectors out of the joint statement. In other words, maybe in the first tranche of the deal, they are not including anything to do with, for instance, wheat, rice, soybean, corn, and of course, dairy products. But let us not allow some room to be left open for these to be brought in later, because surely Trump has a lot to sort of look after in terms of his own support base, which is the base which are the farmers of the United States who want India to be pressurized into purchasing, for instance, corn and soybean. So it is important that we are tough at this very initial stage to make sure that no room is left open for these sensitive sectors to be brought in later. So this is one example. Then, of course, the whole issue of oil. Have we conceded ground on that? What are we saying? All this is open to question. I look forward to seeing what is put down in the joint statement.
Okay, Sathi, we'll let you complete your point. We lost you briefly, and then I'll give the general the closing word. Yeah.
Just making that point that each time we have given up, it's not as if we got something back in return. Yes, we gave up Gulf oil because by then the entire Europe had given up Russian oil. And if both Europe and India continue to buy that Gulf oil, the price would have gone much further up. So there's a lot of different realpolitik reasons for doing what we did do. I'm making the point that India needs to assert its own interests here. You cannot have a situation where India becomes this feeble, energy insecure country at a time when India is trying to grow, essentially waiting for the US to give it permission to buy oil from here or not buy oil from there. And that was the point I was trying to make. I at the end of the day, what we must remember, and Ambassador Dayal is absolutely right, that this is a Trump deal. He will ask for many things. Even once you have the deal, he may say, still tariff you. He's done it to France, where he threatened France with more tariffs over Gaza peace board. He's done it to the European countries over Greenland. So even that has to be taken into account somewhere there. But I think on this issue of oil, we must be very clear that if India is now giving up Russian oil after having given up others for the US, then what is it getting in exchange? And that exchange cannot be just buy more American oil.
Okay, General Shukla, let me give you the closing word. Ambassador Dayal is cautious. Suhasini is skeptical. You believe that in a way the hump has been crossed, the political truce has been called. What would you be looking out for as this joint statement comes to us maybe 5-6 days from now?
No, I'm not saying the hump has been crossed. I hope the hump has been crossed.
Okay.
And if there's any reason to pull back, we will. My point is that here on, by here on, life always is a mix of principle and pragmatism. Now, once the deal was announced, I'm told 5 G engines came through of the LCA. Now, is that give and take or not? If it has actually happened, my assumption is, unless there is evidence to the contrary, those in power will make sure that our interests are protected. They will compromise, they will show pragmatism, but I have no reason to suggest that they will surrender our interests. And principally because today we have many cards. Trump wanted us to recommend him for the Nobel Prize, did we? Trump wanted us to say that he ended the war, did we say so? So this is a different India. It's not a wallflower. I keep saying it is the toast of the world. We've just shown to him. I mean, one of the reasons why he may have done what he is doing now is because we pulled off the deal with the EU. So we have cards, we will play them, but there is no doubt that they are what, 80,000 per capita economy. We are a 2,800 per capita economy. So we are the guys who do have to give in here and there a little bit. But I am not convinced that we are surrendering repeatedly and consecutively. We are standing up, but USA is USA.
Okay, we leave it there. I think everything else is theoretical till we actually have the agreement before us, and I think we can all agree on that. Thank you very much, General Shukla, Ambassador Dayal Suhasini Haider. Always a pleasure, and to our audience, thank you. See you same time tomorrow. Thank you for watching. It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.